Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm David, and I'm very happy to have you again. What I propose today is that we discuss about the idea of feedback. Feedback not only in the way we as teachers give feedback to the students, but also in the way that students give feedback to us regarding the lessons, regarding our classrooms, and also in the way we request feedback from our line managers, and the way in which systematically when we reflect on our teaching, we use feedback coming from different stakeholders to improve our strategies and to make us better teachers. So feedback is part of the communication skills, and it's something that is crucial if we want to look for improvement. And again, students' improvement, our improvement, or the company in which we work improvement. So first of all, let's try to see how can we define this idea of feedback. What does it mean? So basically, feedback, it's a list of messages that we receive from other people about how they perceive us, or how they perceive what we do. So this feedback can be sometimes, and hopefully most of the time, positive. Sometimes feedback can be neutral, but of course, feedback can also be giving us ideas, opinions, and proposals on how to change in order to improve. Basically, whatever the feedback is, being positive or being less positive, it's always something that has as a purpose to improve performance. And this is something that we need to know how to do, and we need to know how to request, because feedback can become something very negative if it's not given appropriately. So what we want is to see different techniques and different strategies in which feedback can be given in a way that is positive and leads to improvement. What I'm going to do is to share with you some activities, some strategies, so we can give and receive feedback in a fun way in class. First of all, let's try to see what's the best way to give or to receive feedback, if there is any. So this is a proposal of a list of steps to be taken when we look at the feedback we give to somebody. The first one is that feedback must be honest. And this is sometimes quite complicated, in particular when we give feedback to students that are already emotionally insecure, or when we give feedback to colleagues, if we have sessions on peer coaching, for example. And if you want to know what peer coaching is, I invite you to have a look at the video that is uploaded on my channel. But it's important that when we give feedback, it is really what we've seen. It really reflects our opinion on what we think. But at the same time, it's great if we could exemplify the feedback points. So instead of just saying, try to come up with precise examples that the person that is receiving the feedback can take with him or with her in order to improve. And this is why the next slides of this presentation, we will have some examples on how to give feedback. But at the same time is what kind of techniques can we use? One of them can be the simple sandwich technique, even if I know that there are some discussions around saying that this technique is not deep enough. But the sandwich technique is easy. Is start first with the positive aspects and then the comments that lead to improvement, or the constructivist comments. And these are the ones which are more complicated to give, because these are the ones that we need to be careful in the way we give them. What about asking the person then? What if? Instead of saying you should, you must. What about starting the questions or starting the feedback by saying, what if you do this? What if you try this? What would happen? So inviting the other person to reflect on the comments that we're giving. Then think critically about the feedback that we receive, and think critically in the way we're going to give feedback. So look at the pros, look at the cons, take the important things from it. Provide specific suggestions, and my proposal here is to work on the SMART or the GROW models that I'm going to just go very quick through it in the next slide. And finally, that's crucial looking at the emotional management of the feedback. It's important that we take that into consideration as probably the most important point. The way in which we give the feedback must always be a way where the other person feels that the goals are achievable and the other person feels that the feedback is being given in a very positive way. Looking at the well-being of the person. This is extremely important. So look at these SMART and GROW models as a way to provide this feedback. The GROW stands for goal, current reality, options, and will, or way forward. So it is basically the process of giving feedback, but very straightforward, isn't it? So the goal is what's the objective that we want to meet. The current reality is the situation now. And then the options is from the current reality to the goal, what are the obstacles that we can find, or what are the options that we can decide to take in order to reach that goal, and then the next steps, the will or the way forward. And SMART, it's probably the same thing, you're very familiar with that, I'm sure, is that the feedback must be specific, must be measurable, something that has to or can be achieved, it has to be attainable, relevant, and time-based. So try to look at these two different models. I particularly like the SMART model. It's something that I use very often when I give feedback to my students or when I take part of professional development of members of my teaching community. So then we go through this SMART idea of the feedback. So let's try now to see some activities that we can do in class or we can do with colleagues. But in particular, these are activities that we can do during homeroom or where we can spend a period in our lessons to just think about that, isn't it? But I'm going to give you a very broad one, and you can make it specific to your subject. I wanted to avoid presenting something too subject specific. So have two students sitting back to back as in the picture, and have one of them with a picture in front of them and describing the picture. And then the illustrator will have to draw the picture on a piece of paper to see to what extent that picture is similar to the one that the describer is describing. So this is a generic way of giving feedback, and you have the link to the article in there, but you can make that subject specific by having the describer describing something specific to your subject in terms of, I don't know, feelings, atmosphere, interesting things, things to improve, or about themselves. You can have this feedback activity being done as a personality development. But this is a very, very interesting one and quite fun, because at the end, when you have, after the session, when you have the describer and the illustrator comparing the pictures or the objects, then they can start the discussion. So the describer can try to explain what was his or her intention when describing that object, and the illustrator can explain why did he understand that particular thing. So trying to look for misconceptions or misunderstanding is a very, very fun activity. Another one is to prepare 3 flip charts. Yeah, in one of them you will write less, in the other one you will write same, and the other one you will write more. So basically, and this is very, very useful for a classroom when you have students that will consider what would they like to see more in the class, or what would they like to see less in the class, or what is working well in the class. And then you have the students using a little sticky note and then writing their comments, and then they will stand up and they will go and stick their notes in the correct column, less, same, more. So basically you want them to have at least 1 comment per column. And then they will have 5 minutes to fill this in, or 10 minutes, depending on the age of the students, and then they will have the freedom to go and stick their notes in the flip charts. And then what you do, that's the first step. Let's say, okay, the post-it notes will be stuck in every flip chart. Then after that, you will divide the students in 3 groups, and they will ask one group to go to the more, one to go to the less, one to go to the same, and then try to put the notes in order. See if there's any note that is repeated. See if there's a pattern. See if there's something that stands out of the other comments. Yeah. And then finally, in stage 3, what you're going to have is a discussion with a group. And then you will take, as a teacher, the comments from the group as positive feedback, as constructive feedback, as a way for you to improve the atmosphere, for you to improve the teaching strategies, or whatever the students consider that must be improved in the class. This is very, very useful when you want to create new ties between the students, or you want to create a friendship, collaborative atmosphere in the class, or maybe you want to ask for feedback about your own teaching strategies, but students are too shy and they don't want to openly say what they think. By writing it in anonymous notes, they feel that freedom of saying what they think and what they feel in your classes. A very useful one. Another one can be this one, and this is also something more as a social skills more than anything else. But you can divide the class in groups, and then to each group you're going to give them a piece of a sheet of paper, and then you will ask them first to write what do they have in similar, in common, the members of this group. Yeah, so the members of the same group, they will be talking to each other, and they will try to find similarities between themselves, and they're going to write that on a piece of paper. Yeah, and they will be invited to consider many things: attitudes, behaviors, mentalities, whatever they want. What we want is to avoid superficial comments like, oh, we both have long hair, or we both have blue eyes. It's trying to go more in depth into looking at these similarities between the members of the group. And then after that, you will do the same thing, but they will be looking at unique aspects of each one of them, and they will write that on a piece of paper as well. And at the end, you will bring back everyone together, and you will again trigger that conversation, that discussion about similarities, about uniqueness. But what you have is that you improve the social skills, you create an atmosphere of friendship, of collaboration, and at the same time, you invite people to tell the others why are they different, why are they similar, and they were going to do it in a way that, in a very smart way, trying to avoid offensive comments, trying to avoid comments that could be negative or seen negative by the other person. So these 3 activities, I think they're very, very useful. And another one that I would like to propose is based on the visual thinking routines from Harvard Project Zero. And if you want to know what visual thinking routines are, please go to another of my videos, which is precisely about that, a very interesting one about a publication from visual thinking routines. Anyway, so that's the one, compass points. So you can have this big compass written on a board, on a flip chart, and then you're going to give sticky notes to the students. This can also be used as an exit ticket from a lesson, for example, a very useful one. Or when you lead a workshop, or when you facilitate a workshop, you can also use that to make sure that your participants reflect on their own learning process. And then you will ask the students to put in the N what they still need to know about a precise topic with sticky notes. In the E, what excites them about what they've learned today. In the S, what are the next steps to be taken then? So once that we've learned that, what do we think the next steps are? And in the W is what worries them. In the West, what was not clear. And they can stick their comments in the flip chart and leave the class, and then you can take those comments as a feedback for yourself, for your lesson. Or you can also do that after a presentation being done by a group of students. You can have the other ones in terms of, in a way of a peer assessment strategy, just going and filling in that compass points thinking routine. A very, very interesting one. You will be surprised about the amount of things that you learn from a compass point thinking routine at the end of a lesson. Students can stick that, leave the lesson, and you, when you're calm, you can just look at all the comments and take those comments as feedback for yourself. And what I think is the most important bit, and I finish with this, is the follow-up on the feedback. My experience tells me that we do provide feedback easily, and if we can have an open door policy in the school where everybody goes and visits the lessons of colleagues, or if you have a peer coaching program implemented in school, which is a great idea, is that after the feedback, we should have a process in which we follow up on the advice given. Because if not, basically, then we don't have evidence of improvement of performance. So I think that is crucial that after a session of feedback, we can have, after a week or two, a follow-up session when we see or when we look at the particular advice that has been given, the particular constructive comments that were given during the feedback session, and see how those comments have helped the person to develop or to improve. So this is my proposal about feedback. I would love to hear from you in the chat. I would love to hear your comments. How do you provide feedback to the students? What strategies do you use? And please share that with us, because if we don't share, then there's no point of us having any kind of session, isn't it? It's the best way to learn from each other if we write our comments and we can tell the others how do we do it and what do you think about each session. Thank you very much. See you for the next session. Goodbye.